A very good evening and welcome to Korere, a platform for a big conversation. My name is Godwin Sunday. With 2027 slowly coming into view, Nigeria's political atmosphere is already becoming more intense. Beyond the politicians and also the parties, the spotlight is once again falling on institutions expected to protect the credibility of the democratic process. From controversial court rulings to debate around electoral reforms and party disputes, questions continue to grow about the role of both Inec and the judiciary in shaping political outcomes. For many, Nigerians' confidence in democracy is no longer based on only voting, but also on whether institutions are seen as independent and transparent and accountable as they should be. As preparations gradually begins ahead of another election cycle, concerns are already even on the pipeline about the electoral integrity, judicial influence, and public trust. Are they truly central to do they remain central to even the national conversation? Well, we'll begin to look at all of this tonight, even on Carreras. We'll take a closer look at the 2027 political build-up, examining INEC, Nigerian court, and what current developments could mean for the future of the country's democracy. Joining me tonight is Professor Chris Nwakwobia Jr., a lawyer and also a public affairs analyst. Lest I forget to also add that he's the convener of Country First movement, and he'll be helping us put all of these issues in perspective. Please stay with us as the conversation begins immediately after this break. And so you're welcome back. As the 2027 general elections approach, the intersection of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, the judiciary, and the evolving political landscape has become a critical stress test for the future of Nigeria's democracy. Now, INEC is under immense pressure to move beyond the trust deficit left by previous cycles. A primary concern for 2027 remains the consistent application of the bimodal voters accreditation system, popularly known as BVAS, and the result viewing portal of INEC, known as IREV. There is a stronger point of even all of this issue, which centers around the no bypass policy to ensure that only accredited voters are counted and that results are uploaded in real time. The deadline for candidate submission for upcoming primary cycle is reportedly set for May the 30th, 2026, forcing parties to resolve internal leadership crisis rapidly. The courts are increasingly viewed as a third chamber of the electoral process, leading to concerns about the judicialization of democracy. Conflicting rulings on party leadership, most notably within the People's Democratic Party and the ADC, have created a climate where party legitimacy is often decided in courtrooms rather than at conventions. The political structure is shifting away from the traditional APC versus PDP binary to even more focal political conversation. Well, I'm being joined this evening by Professor Chris Nwakwobia, who is a public affairs analyst and lawyer and also the convener of Country First movement. Prof, it's a delight to have you on Correro. Good evening.
The pleasure is mine. Nwakwobia Jr.
Okay, Nwakwobia Jr. I forgot to even add the Mustafa to it. It's all good. Prof, let's even begin the conversation by first looking at the generality of the Nigerian electoral system. Now, let's even travel a step backward to 2023. INEC made a lot of promises that the BVAS is going to work, the IREV is going to work. Now, this gave rise and even Nigerians were able to build confidence about 82,209,000 people were able to collect their PVC in trust that INEC would deliver. But that election, a lot of Nigerians' hope were dashed because the 2023 election was not what was expected. But so far, we are entering into another political season. Now, the momentum is already gathering ahead of the 2027. In your perspective, do you think the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has regained public confidence after the controversy surrounding the 2023 general elections?
I think your foray into history has laid a foundation for what we're about to do has laid a formidable template. The fact that Mahmoud Yaqub traversed not only the nation but across the world, promising that he was going to conduct an election that would be at par with what obtains in other civilized democracies. He promised that we're going to have an election that was free, fair, and credible. He promised that we're going to have real-time transmission of results to from the polling centers straight to the IRF, and so Nigerians could see. He promised that not only were Nigerians going to have access to election results premium time, real time, that his Inec was going to be free, fair, credible, competent, and if you like, one that Nigerians could trust. But very unfortunately, what became of the 2023 election is today still a matter of intense debates. You have a large segment of Nigerians who believe, like I do, that elections were largely flawed. Take for instance, in one day, same day, the results that came out of the presidential contestation, the presidential votings, could not be transmitted to the IRF. Same day, the results for the Senate and the House of Reps could and were transmitted to the IRF. Elections that happened just about the same time. So it's simple. And then remember, I followed your opening remarks, fantastic prologue. And you see where you did talk about the judicialization of democracy, if you like. And remember that cliche that became popular when Mahmoud Yaqub was collating results, go to court. That gave an inkling to the fact that we had a judiciary that was waiting by the sidelines to do the bidding of the executive. And very unfortunately, the judiciary has continued to tell us that our democracy is perhaps subject to their whims and caprices and manipulated and machinated by the executive. And that's the challenge we have now. And so when you asked, does Inec appear to have regained or built up some level of credibility? The answer is no. In fact, we have about the worst going to a new election, going to another general election. We have about the worst credibility quotient for an Inec chairman. And I say this advisedly, it's there before you. This is the first time an Inec chairman is telling us long before the election that he has the piper and he who plays the tune, he who pays the piper calls the tune. He has a master somewhere who dictates what he does. And that's simply why a professor of law, I'm a lawyer, a professor of law doesn't seem to understand what we learned in elementary law, Law 101, the Nigerian legal system, what we learned about stare decisis, for instance, about res judicata, about status quo ante bellum. And he went ahead to do what he did that raised quite a hoopla, and that was the reason why ADC and leaders of the opposition have been calling for his removal or resignation, if you like. But I want to say here clearly that there is a cliche, a phraseology that appeals to my soul, and that's that statement about statesmen and politicians. The politicians care just about the next election, and statesmen care about the next generation. Tragically, we have those who are only interested from the new Electoral Act and the machinations, the manipulations of that process, to the nuances of the judiciary and Inec regarding the build-up to the next election. They were in trouble. And I'm not crying wolf. I'm stating the obvious, And then recently you saw how Inec became a forensic expert over whether Joash Amopiton put something on X, Twitter, during the last election, and INEC, instead of subjecting the whole details to a forensic, an independent forensic, came out to absolve Joash Amopiton. So I think that this INEC, this presidency, this government must understand that congruent with the tenets of democracy is the freeness and the fairness of elections. Congruent with democracy is the perception of the people as to whether the process is free and fair. Congruent with democracy is how the world sees our process and our protocol. And very tragically, what we have on ground doesn't spell good for INEC.
Well, Prof, just about 480 something days, I can't place the figures right now, to the 2023 election. We saw
it's not up to
400 and something days to the 2023 election. Now, taking you back again.
Okay, yeah.
So we saw the signing of the 2022 Electoral Act. And of course, that one would have thought would have completely transformed the electoral system. But right now, we're seeing a replay of that Electoral Act again. But a lot of Nigerians will say at this point that they've been able to fight to get the Electoral Act of their dream, looking at the number of persons that came out, even at NAS, to protest. Now, with the signing of this particular Electoral Act, the 2026 Electoral Act, into law, can we say that our electoral laws are right now strong enough to address issues of vote buy, issues around electoral violence and electoral manipulation of results?
Sadly, and this beats me deep, sadly, rather than improve on the electoral protocol of permit my choice of words, the former Electoral Act, the Electoral Act 2026 falls short on several grounds, sadly. And the one that bothers me most is the fact that it went further than just that to going rogue. And permit my choice of words. How did he go rogue? No longer does the Electoral Act recognize certificate forgery. No longer does it recognize fictitious documentations as an offense under our electoral regime. So the new Electoral Act is saying that you can doctor documents, doctor your certificate, forge your certificate, and you're okay, you're good to go. And then not only does that bother me, it's the fact that it reduced the period for campaign from, I think, 150 days to 120 days. Now invariably saying to you that the ruling party that has obviously begun campaign, Godwin, you know, go through your news, you see them. They're everywhere. Adverts about the incumbent regime, adverts about what is happening. And so we have a big problem on our hands. And I think that the time has come for, and this is an appeal to those who are around Mr. President, you know, if what we went through under the military, for which he was credited as one of those who fought against military rule, along with some of us, if that counts for anything, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should insist that the build-up to 2027 general elections should be credible and transparently so. Very unfortunately, like you noted, we're moving from an electoral act that Nigerians lampooned to a worse electoral act.
So you think this electoral act is not the best? Is not what Nigerians deserve at this
time?
Even though the numbers of persons that came out even at NAS to protest and demand.
Remember why that demand came? Yeah. The demand was basically for real-time transmission of election results. And very unfortunately, after the National Assembly at the level of the House of Reps has allowed for it, the Senate said no. And whatever happened behind the scene, they eventually came with a proviso, permit my choice of word, an indefinite law. Now, a law that is dependent on environment, circumstance, and weather. that if at the end of the day you cannot transmit, then the returning officer should use the manual. And then you ask yourself, if you give that right and that room, then every electoral officer who has been approached can simply say, I cannot transmit. And now, permit me chisel this in. What bothers me deeply is the fact that those who should pretend are political space often forget that this is the only country we have. Often forget that if we have an electoral regime that is lampooned as not being fair and credible, that it would deepen this shade of electoral apathy. Remember, the last election was largely low in terms of turnout. None of the presidential candidates got up to 9 million. That was how bad it is, with the fact that over 82 million Nigerians collected their voters card. You didn't have total number of votes cast was more than 30 million. That's how bad it was. So if you must ensure that Nigerians turn out in 2027, the build up to that process must win the trust and the confidence of the Nigerian people. Very unfortunately, Joash Amopito's Inec and the ruling government of the APC hasn't done a good job of that.
Well, Prof, you've even touched the issue around the Section 63 of the Electoral Act, which says that subject to subsection 2, a ballot paper which does not bear official mark prescribed by the Commission shall not be accounted. Now, a lot of Nigerians, that section of the Constitution has sparked a lot of reactions. But from a legal standpoint, help us understand this section of the Constitution, Section 63 of the Electoral Act, please.
No, you see, where my brother and friend Mike Igine raised the issues, and we went looking at it, where invariably they're telling you that those who have access to INEC materials or materials that they can print, whether it has the proper marking like every other electoral balloting materials, can come to INEC from his bedroom with a truckload of papers and say these papers have valid voting normative, and so it must be admitted. What they're trying to say in essence is that the returning officers have the right to admit a toilet paper as a ballot. And that's the tragedy of it. What they're saying is that whoever has access, whoever has control, can rig the election, and under the law, so long as the returning officer sees that ballot, his judgment, as proper and tried, can admit them. And let me say, Godwin, strongly, that if we truly love our country, there is need, and so many of my colleagues in the civil society have been saying that the National Assembly must return quickly to look at that law. And some of these dirty, permit my choice of word, these dirty and messy areas must be quickly corrected so that there should be and would be, if you like, some semblance of confidence in the electoral regime, the electoral law, and the electoral umpire, the INEC. And because, see, like I said, you can't say you have a democracy if you don't have credible elections. You can't coronate people and call it a democracy. You know, largely I think that the time has come for us to begin to ask those who should pretend this country to do right. Largely I think that the time has come for us to insist that whatever laws we have should be in tandem with global reality. And it was my mentor, Martin Luther King Jr., who said, because I've told people that if these laws sustain and continue, then there should be what you call sit tights and sit in. Martin Luther King Jr. would say that disobedience of an unjust law is indeed the greatest respect for the law. I think that the time has come for, and we must not cower on our rights. We should tell Joash Amipton, we should tell the rogue National Assembly headed by citizen Akpabio, that things must be done rightly. We're not a conquered people. We're not a people who must be teleguided and railroaded into coronating the APC in 2027.
Well, interesting. Now, since we're talking about the Electoral Act, let's even look at Section 83, subsection 5 and 6 of the Electoral Act, and also by extension, looking at Section 88, subsection 4 of the Electoral Act. Turning to the judiciary right now, that section has made it clear that the court is not supposed to even intervene in party matters. So now, critics often accuse the court of judicializing elections. Now, looking at the recent Supreme Court judgment on political parties, do you think the judiciary is actually strengthening Nigerians' nascent democratic institutions, or it is further weakening these institutions?
The APC government, through Yeso Mezo Wike, has made the judiciary the Achilles heels of our democracy. You quoted the appropriate sections that says clearly that the internal affairs of political parties should not be justiciable. Tragically, Godwin, very unfortunately, where cases that has to do with the internal affairs of all parties other than the APC, the judiciary surprisingly has come to claim jurisdiction. They've come to say, yes, we can look at these issues. But just yesterday or so, a matter was brought before the judiciary regarding the leadership of the APC. And I said, no, it doesn't concern us. The Supreme Court has ruled.
So you think it's a selective, justice, is it a selective justice system?
Yeah, it is absolutely clear. It's that phraseology, the witch cried last night, the child dies this morning. You're left with your conjectures. You can make your conjectures about who killed the child. It's what we have. When it comes to the Labour Party, when it comes to the ADC, when it comes to the PDP, the judiciary is alive like a tiger. And they're overdoing and outperforming the law. And tragically, when it comes to issues that affects the APC, the judiciary remembers that the law provides for the parties to have control over their internal affairs. Our last section, 83. And I think that the time has come for us to remind this government. I don't know whether you followed the series I wrote, one in this government, that the greatest threat to our democracy is indeed the APC. You know, if you undermine democratic institutions, you undermine the law, you stifle dissent, you stifle the right to opposition, the freedom to coalesce, the freedom to meet.
But Prof,
when you do all that, you threaten democracy.
You've been citing APC, but then APC did not just, this whole system did not just start today. It has become like a recurring thing within the Nigerian body politics from 1999 till date, if we want to even back.
No, if we want to be fair to historicity, I hear this phraseology, I hear this refrain, but if we want to be fair to our history, you will know, very recent history, if Jonathan played the script, there wouldn't have been an APC. If Jonathan refused them the right, don't forget, maybe perhaps that's why the APC is doing what it's doing. Because Jonathan allowed freedom, allowed the liberty, allowed them access to federal institutions and federal infrastructure. And, you know, maybe perhaps that's what they're, if Jonathan had stifled our rights to participate, perhaps we wouldn't have won. And so we're not going to make the mistake of allowing freedoms. But I want to say clearly here that Nigeria as a country is beyond partisan politics and politics. And they must know that nations outgrow individuals, whether you're decent or whether you're brutish. Nations will outgrow you. And they should also know that there is a city called legacy. What you sow, what seed you sow, you should reap. They should also know that lame defense, because I heard some people say, the opposition couldn't organize itself. Oh, what is the proof? Even the president is given proof that they enjoy, and they give him primatur, according to the chief of staff to the president. They give him primatur to the troubles in the opposition. Remember the guy from Kogi that he was saluting his efforts in putting daggers and spanners in the works for the opposition. And I want to say clearly here that the government will be the ultimate loser if you refuse the people the right to dissent, if you refuse the people the right to effective opposition, if you refuse the people the right to challenge your leadership, then you're going to be the ultimate loser, because what you're building is you're giving street credibility to those who decide to resist you. You're giving the right to those who decide to say no, and you're perhaps giving precursor to conflict, crisis, and violence.
Well, Prof, in a situation where the Nigerians are feeling the brunt of these administrations, you've said some of the lacunas that we've seen even from the
I didn't just say you know.
Well, I don't know you saying it. Of course.
I didn't just say you know.
We are looking at the sections, but then looking at the reality of this whole conversation right now, Nigerians are not even speaking up to the judiciary, the Supreme Court, to even carry out placard to protest in such a scenario. Can we say that the citizens are complacent when it has to do with their whole inability to even challenge the system?
No, I'm one person who has consistently defended the approach of the Nigerian hoi polloi, the approach of the Nigerian people and the masses to what is happening. And I disagree with that statement about Nigerians not protesting or Nigerians. Remember, and I want to call a few names, my younger brother, Peter from Nigeria. Remember that young lady from Edo, Mama P. Remember the protestations on the streets. Even my brother Isaac Fayoshe and several other people have been on the streets. I would have consistently been on the street but for my legs, but I'm recovering. And so if this government continues, I'll show them that physiotherapy has done quite a lot. You'll see me very
right.
Yeah, but what is important here going forward is the fact that, and I want to say this with a sense of seriousness, that government and those who pretend our presidency must understand that it doesn't make them weak if they allow the opposition the right to thrive, the freedom to give them a challenge. If you believe that you're doing well, sell your message to the Nigerian people and stop using the judiciary to trouble the opposition. And then look at what happened regarding the build-up to the ADC convention, for instance. You remember the news. It went as bad as the man who finally decided to give up his property for the convention was threatened with revocation of his license. And it was until the ADC leaders told him that we have a contract and we must use that premises. And he went as far as putting off the ACs. That's how bad it is. No matter how much the APC denies stifling, narrowing down the public space, the obvious is there. Nigerians know exactly what is happening. It is about, like I said, the witch cried last night. The figures are there. The statistics are there. I'll give you a practical instance. Labour Party was every day in the courts until Peter Gregory Obi left the Labour Party. And suddenly, Labour Party got a reprieve. I'm sure that since he has left the ADC, perhaps the ADC will have some reprieve. And then as you and I talk, I hope you know, and you've been hearing the musings of certain individuals taking up legal issues against the NDC. And you ask yourself, why? And I want you to ponder and ask yourself, why is this presidency scared? You have almost 32 state governors. You have 82% of the Senate. You have over 75% of the Federal House of Representatives. You control the state apparatus. Why are you scared? Why are they nonplussed about the little efforts of the opposition to organize. And why are they determined to stop the opposition from organizing? I think that the time has come for those who are around Mr. President to tell him that you've done enough damage, not to the opposition, but to our democracy. The time to wake up and allow for a noble, ennobling, and wonderful political space is now.
All right, so come 2027, now, over the years, we've always seen the court determine who becomes the victor in elections. Now, the Electoral Act, which we even ex-reign, have brought out a very magnificent declaration and pronouncement that the judiciary ought not to even intervene. But then, come 2027, are we going to be seeing more of court victories rather than winning on the ballots?
If you ask me what I want the people to determine who leads them. If you ask me what my prayers are, I pray that we don't have an Inec chairman who tells you if you don't like the results, go to court. If you ask me what my expectations are, I truly wish and pray that perhaps Joash Amopiton, if he's not resigning, comes out to the people like Caesar's wife, above board. But you know what? I want to be as straight and as true as truth can be. I worry for what lies ahead. I worry for 2027. And I tell you, we had a snowball. We had a massive increase in litigations after 2023. I tell you, our courts will have an overload with what is building up.
Even though the Electoral Act have come out to stipulate clearly that the court should not even intervene in pre-election matters and also the
But they're already
matters.
Doing that.
Let's say
you can see that everywhere.
So from the
they are there
regarding
regarding SDP. They are there regarding PDP. They are there regarding ADC. And I pray they are not there regarding.
You think that there will be post-election challenges? And
monstrous. With what is happening, with the build-up. You know, my late dad told me something that when the first few steps of a dancer will tell you where we're headed. You know, Joash Amopito hasn't told you that he's interested in the credibility of the electoral process.
Well, we can't say that authoritatively.
No, but he hasn't said so.
He has come out to always say that the 2027 election
Who made that tweet?
It will be fair, will be credible, and will be transparent. Tweet? Well, I don't know that I've had encounter with him.
A forensic expert to tell us who made the tweet.
So
why did he subject himself to an independent
let's
forensic?
Just put the record straight there.
You know, I think that the time has come for us to call a spade by its name.
And you think that
if we want a country to
Joash Amopiton will not be able to give us a free, fair, and credible election?
He really has a lot to do to convince me. The APC has a massive mountain to climb to convince me. And that's why I've said to the opposition and to my comrades and brothers that it's time to unite, coalesce, and understand ourselves and forge a formidable opposition against this government is now. The time to ensure that we have one formidable candidate against the Bola Ahmed Tinubu presidency is now.
If you had belonged to the APC, the real APC, what would have been your position on this matter?
You know the truth. I was one of those effectively involved in the formation of the APC. And I was one individual who headed one of the arms of campaign of the Buhari presidency. I was the DG Change Ambassadors of Nigeria in 2014, 2015. I have always put country first, and that's the name of my movement. You know why? I'm concerned about Generation Next. I know that we're here on a lane. Godwin, I'm about 14 years older than this Nollywood actor that just passed on yesterday. Alex Ekubo. I'm about 14 years older. Nobody has a guarantee as to how long we're going to be here. if nature and time, if the Almighty allows you space and time, be very careful about what you leave behind. There's a place called legacy. Very unfortunately, and I say this with every sense of commitment, the average Nigerian politician does not know that. And they haven't even learned from our historicity. You know, the dump sites of history is replete with the ignoble tendencies of the average Nigerian politician. That is why you truly cannot even remember so many of them. That is why, even when they are gone, their families are in tatters. That is why, even when they are gone, governments struggle to give some kind of handouts to their children and that is why we're where we are. And I think that the time has come for us to, if I were allowed to speak to every one of them in a hall, I'll ask them to show me what has become of the scions, of the children of those who pretended over our country years gone. And then you find out that perhaps some of them will leave that hall with tears in their eyes because they struggled to amass wealth. I grew up in a town called Saple. I attended a secondary school that was built by Chief Festus Okotiebo. I also know that when I was leaving the university, most of his estates were being sold by his children to those who were children of cleaners when he was Minister of Finance. And so you ask yourself, what does history tell you? I am not envious of these men who do not know tomorrow. I do not envy them in any way. I actually, and I say this with every sense of commitment, I pity them. Because almost always, history has shown, look, where are the scions of Mobutu Sese Seko? Where are the scions of Samuel Doe? Where are the scions of these people who conquered and messed up nations? You know what?
Yeah.
History will judge most of them harshly. And so in the build-up to 2027, I think that what we must begin to tell this man is to think about Generation Next and think about what will bequest to posterity.
Prof, you ran for presidency in 2011.
Just about 40.
Oh, well,
I'm still the youngest to have been on the ballot.
2011.
Yeah.
So far, we've not seen you on the ballot. And it's worrisome. A lot of Nigerians will say that perhaps Prof is scared to even come in to challenge the system. Again. All right, so let's even get you react to why you've not been on the ballot so far.
You know, I ran for president in 2011. I was 40 about 3 days to the election. I ran because I thought it was time to transform our country. But you know what? I came out of that contestation broke. I spent almost all I had to run that race. A few months after, I was ejected from where I was staying. You know, this is an interesting story. You know, it's been life of recovery. And then I have told myself that and it was interesting this afternoon, a brother of mine and I were discussing, and I said, I'll do that again someday. But I'll do that ready, strong, and complete. And I'm speaking deeply. The deep calls to deep. You know, those who can understand my deep approach to these issues will grapple with it. But you know what is important? I may not have been on the ballot, but I've been consistently involved in the process. In 2013, 2014, I was part of the process of the formation of the APC, believing that the late President Muhammadu Buhari was going to deliver. And I think that of all those who were involved in the formation of the APC, I was just about the first to leave the APC. I left the APC in 2017 because, and I challenged the party, I told them that we had told Nigerians in 2014, 2015 that change would begin with us, that we're going to transform our country. And remember, the mantra of that campaign was change. Very unfortunately, just about a few months into the APC administration, Ebola Mohammed launched Change Begins With You. And I said, no, that's not what we told Nigerians. And that was when I left the party. Now, in 2019, I was part of those who fought for the APC to lose. And you remember what happened in 2019 and the contestation up to the Supreme Court. And Muhammadu Buhari was confirmed president. In 2023, I was one of the spokespersons of the Peter Obi campaign. I was the lead spokesperson of the Big Tent, the independent campaign organization of Peter Obi. And I donated an office. The Abuja headquarters of the Big Tent was my office.
Guaripa?
Yes, in Guarimpa. Because I was committed. Oh, how did you know?
We've been following you, Prof.
So my commitment is for a nation that works for all. And that commitment is unalterable. Nothing will change it. That commitment is as sure as death. That commitment is my life. And so I love that question. And my truth is the fact that I've run for president since 2011 in so many ways. And in the build-up to 2027, I'm aware that you may have heard that there is what I call Project Vote Competency and Capacity, PVCC. And the challenge is to tell Nigerians that beyond partisanship, we can actually identify the best candidates and rise above whether it's APC, ADC, NDC, and whatever, and vote for that candidate that you think holds the lot for a country that works for all.
Well, Prof, before we let you go, because I've been saying that our time is fast spent, what will be your advice to Nigerians come 2027 with all that you've seen within the political space from time immemorial to now? For 2027, general election, is there light at the end of the tunnel?
It was Chief Obafemi Awolowo of blessed memory who said that hope is the last milk in the human breast. I am a deep optimist. I truly believe that at all times, even at the darkest moment, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And that's why I think that what we must tell our people, and here I'm talking to Nigerians at home and those who are listening to me, the time has come for you to believe in what you can do with your thumb. The time has come for you to learn to say no to the mess of porridge that politicians throw at you. The cups of rice, the indomie, the words of 5,000, 2,000, 10,000 naira, because it won't guarantee 4 years. And if you sell the next 4 years to underperformers, you're going to suffer. The time has come for you to understand that that thumb is as powerful as anything in the world. In 2023, I told Nigerians about the power of the thumb, and I called it the ballot-based revolution. Going to 2027, the time has come for you to think about how you must make your lot better. Politicians ain't going to do it. I've told people, those who think that the opposition will do it are dreaming. The right thing to do is arm yourself with the strongest weapon you can, which is your PVC. And look around, ask questions, find out the candidate who will deliver in your constituency. Find out the candidate who will live true to what he or she says, and vote that candidate. Because don't forget that your life depends on what you do with your thumb. The truth is that if we do the right thing, we'll have a country that works for all. And I'm confident that someday soon, perhaps in 2027, Nigerians will rise to the urgency of now and vote for candidates who will deliver the goods.
Well, Prof, you've nailed it all, and I have more questions to even push, but then I've been signaled that our time is fast spent and I have to wrap up. So this note, I want to say thank you so much, Prof, for finding out time to be with us here on Correro.
The pleasure is mine. And Godwin, let me say, you're one hell of a guy. You know, to get me here, you're a great guy. God bless you.
Thank you
God
so
bless
much.
Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Prof. God bless Nigeria. Well, viewers, this is how far we can go tonight on Correro. Do not forget that you can leave your thoughts, you can leave your comments on our various social media handle currently showing on your screen. And you can also download the Rapid TV app from your Android and iOS devices to keep track of our broadcasts. Again, my name is Godwin Sunday. Do remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Do enjoy the rest of your night rest. Bye for now.